Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habib. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who aren't sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine Allah, Yahweh, Elohim, Brahman, higher power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. I'm super excited and grateful to once again have Abdul Karim Pinckney joining us. Abdul Karim is uh, is also known as the man of real. He is a former imam. For those of you who don't know, that's a person who leads prayers in a mosque. Um, and last time we were talking, we talked about he had just released an album called Project Inspire. And so we were engaging in conversation about Project Inspire and what Abdul Karim is seeking to bring into the world. And instead of going on a world tour, uh, and promoting his album for a year, like most pop stars, he's come up with a new album. He has a new album called Manipulations of the Unreal. And when I listened to it, I said, "Hey, you know what we need to do? We need to talk about some of these uh, songs and have conversations about the topics of each of these songs, and then obviously we can play the song too, but like these are important conversations that we should engage in. So with that said, Abdul Karim, thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your latest album, Manipulations of the Unreal?
Okay, alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me. Manipulations of the Unreal was a album I put together, and the title kind of explains some of the mechanisms or the process that I went through. So, Manipulations of the Unreal is really this was a experimental project where I wrote all of the songs, but I had AI, artificial intelligence, actually perform them. So the singers that you hear aren't real people. So that's the manipulations of the unreal. And so I also utilize this to get across similar messages that's in Project Inspire, also to, provoke some sort of thought or reflection in different genres other than rap, because I know people, not everybody listens to rap. And so in this album, there's no rap. There's more, there's even a Western song, kind of like a country song. And pop and R&B is the main genres that this album is. And so it's bringing forth, God consciousness and just social awareness. Uh, there's a song, family, how can we be family? These people, uh, the country song is sorry. It's like, are we too sorry to say sorry? So it just brings up different topics to, think about, and also good music to move to while you're in contemplation.
I laughed at that because I'm not like how do I say this? My wife is a dancer, so like she very much is into music and moving and I am a little bit odd, like I'm a little sensitive to sound.
uh,
So I'm much less I engage music much less than she does.
uh,
And I also don't dance and move the way that as freely as she does. And yet when I listen to um at the moment the particular song is escaping me, but I remember that when I listened to your album that I was like, oh, I'm starting to move. Like there was a I was physically it elicited movement. So
that's good.
that's why I laughed. That's where the laugh came from.
Yeah. And so that's just another means to continue to bring about conscious awareness and also mercy, because a lot of the songs bring that into the conversation or question. And where's the mercy? Where's the love? Where's forgiveness? These sorts of concepts. And then
Yeah.
what does it mean to be human? That's part of one of the songs people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up. So, yes, let's have a conversation about what it is to be human. And then I'll trust you to play the song when you feel like it's the right point in the conversation. So, there's so much to say on this topic, what it is to be human. And one of the things that I was thinking about was just my own personal experience and what I would want to bring to a conversation on this topic. And some of the some of the thoughts that I had honestly were a bit heavy. And I was like, so how do you have a conversation about such a serious topic in an uplifting way? Like how do we like be real?
Mm-hmm.
But also do it in a way that's inspiring and hopeful. So hopefully saying that like sets the intention to do that uh, and opens the door for us to do that in the conversation. So, with that said, so I honestly, in my background, I had some pretty rough experiences as a child, and then as a young adult, it seemed like I was unconsciously uh, putting myself in situations that replicated childhood trauma, and I'm probably not alone in this. I mean, I would imagine that a lot of young adults go through this period, but it was like I was, I remember my therapist at the time was like, okay, you have now put yourself in the situation of physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, like, are you done yet? I mean, I mean, obviously, I'm using a little creative license on that
Yeah.
conversation went, but what I'm saying is that I was in the position to think like, what is it? What is the difference between being a victim and a perpetrator? What does it really mean to be a human being?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what does it mean to be a decent human
Mm-hmm.
being? I know that can be a little bit of a loaded word, and I know that's a judgment call, but one of the things that I was talking about with a friend at the time was just to be human, we need to not only have some level of awareness of our own experience. So, Brother Jamal Rahman would call that compassionate self-witnessing. So there's some level of self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully compassionate self-witnessing. Others don't have that level of self-awareness, but okay. And just awareness not only of the self, but of other. So, like to be human is to be aware of self and to be aware of other. And to be human is to be aware that your experience is not the same as my experience. So, like to have that awareness of what you are perceiving, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling is not going to be the same as mine. So, it's recognizing the difference in experience and caring about it. Um, and that's just sort of like a basic line between, honestly, being a psychopath being a psychopath and not being a psychopath. Like, do you have the ability to recognize that other people's experience is different than yours and to care
Mm-hmm.
about it? And that's not even like going beyond to like say, oh, I want to be a compassionate human being. Like with Buddhism, it's like all the emphasis on is on being, I shouldn't say all, but such a tremendous part of the path of Buddhism is around being compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so first you have to recognize to be human uh, what it, what other person's experience is. You have to care about it. If you want to be more than that, just like if you want to be more than just not psychopathic, there can also be an action, like a compassionate action, like in recognizing what somebody else's experience is and in caring about what someone else's experience is does that caring about their experience elicit a compassionate action?
Mhm.
Yeah. So thoughts, respond.
Yeah, no, that's a big way to see because it's funny in the when you were speaking different places that I've lived, New York, California, and Pennsylvania have popped up in just the reflection of one. I mean, I could start off just saying America because I've, visited other countries, um, seeing that our experience is very unique and in the ability to see a variety. And
Hmm.
then what you were saying about acknowledging that someone else's experiences is different than yours is
Hmm.
a very big part of at least the steps towards developing compassion. Because I have a term for people who don't recognize that, and I just say they're habitual line steppers because they're always
Hmm.
stepping over the lines of other people's whether it's feelings, the way we
Yep.
interpret, because I believe a big part of our humanity is our ability to give reason or make meaning.
Hmm.
Uh, and so our ability to make meaning is huge because that capacity also has a play in our perspective on how we see the world. And so in looking inside, one thing I came across or looking in as far as like scientifically speaking, trying to define like the human being, and
Hmm.
just the simple term was the essence of the human being is described as a biopsychological organism, a conscious, self-reflective, information processing biological system that exists within a social and environmental context. And this to me is something that most of us can attest to as being a part of the truth. And I feel that more holistically when you add like a theological perspective, because one thing that theology does that science doesn't is goes beyond what's empirical. So it adds in purpose. And so humanity has a purpose other than just this function because that definition is like describing a pair of scissors in on the counter. And so that's nice, you know what the scissors can do, but why is it there? And
Hmm.
that plays a huge part of where a theological perspective would have that description and more to bring about like the human story of how we all come together, our beliefs, and so it's tying in a more holistic picture where we would connect it to things that go on in the afterlife, that this world isn't the end, and how we function plays out more than just how it appears here. And that's again from some people who may not have that in their perspective, that's just more humans giving meaning to things that may not have meaning because that particular individual doesn't espouse that same meaning to
Hmm.
life as far as like theology, afterlife, God, and those things. And so that's if you go to a essential element that we're all shared experiences, that we are meaning makers, and that's something to really be aware of, and not to hold the meanings that we apply so rigid as to dismiss other people's experiences.
Mhm.
'Cause that helps us, come together uh, in a more unity, but not uniformity, which is something that's key, where we have a similar experience, but it's not sameness. And sometimes sameness, I think, is a really antagonistic force to the reality of the vibrant nature of humanity.
Mhm. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You got a lot in that, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there. So uh, I don't even know if I could respond to or even remember all the things that you brought in there. But like, okay, I want to speak to so that if I can make some points, hopefully that we can come back to. So
Yeah.
uh, you mentioned biology, so a little bit of biology there. You also mentioned the whole meaning thing and the purpose. So I definitely want to come back to that. And there were so many other things, but let me just start with the biology if I guess.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
So you brought up like what is it to think about what is it to be human in this very sort of scientific definition that you had, if I can use that language or terminology. Uh, One of the things that occurs to me is the fact that neuroscience research has shown that our brains, we have mirror neurons. And for anybody who's listening who might not know what mirror neurons are, like those are the neurons when if I see you yawn and I yawn, you know, if you, I'm sure we've all experienced that kind of thing, especially with loved ones. Like it's like we are naturally built for empathy. So when we see a facial expression on another person, on some level, we have this micro adjustment so that we try on that facial expression ourselves. So we biologically, physiologically, we recreate what we witness as an empathetic, like built-in system. Um, so I think it's very important to realize, okay, we are built. You talked about building compassion, like recognizing somebody else's experiences is different from your own, like that opens the door to being compassionate. Uh, if we are not being compassionate, if we're not feeling compassionate, then somehow we've actually gone in the opposite way of how we are physiologically made. So, so, so I think it's important to remember that what it is to be human is, in fact, to be empathetic and to be compassionate to each other. Um, and there's a connection between mirror neurons being empathy and compassion. And I think with with the meaning and the meaning making and the purpose, like why are we here and what do we hope to accomplish? Like what are we about? You
Yeah.
um, and on that topic, you also one of the things you also mentioned was um, you used the word
Sameness.
sameness, um, and unify something along sameness
Oh,
and
uniformity and unity. Those.
uniformity, unity, yeah. Um, so what that made me think of was that one of my teachers has said that one of the things that is uniquely human is the ability to bring harmony to where there is disharmony, the ability to bring unity to where there is disunity. So to be human, I think, is not only to like embrace our physiological capacity for empathy and compassion, but also to use that to bring harmony, to bring unity, um, and to live, like to actually act from that place, not just like carry it around as a mental construct, but to embody it, to actualize it. Um, So what else? Let's see. You brought up so much else in that. Um, I suppose one of the things that somehow got triggered by what you said, or not triggered, brought up by what you said is the whole when you think about meaning making, like humans are meaning making. Like where do we make meaning the most? And I had seems like my way of engaging in conversations is like revealing all this very personal information. So, Bismillah. Uh, when when I mentioned the challenging childhood, so I had challenging relationships with my family of origin. So my mother, my father, my only sibling, um, and and but when each of them died, it was as if their spirits visited me in my dreams for a period of time after each of their deaths. And what I saw in the dream or came to or realized, whatever language you want to put to that, is like regardless of who or what my father was or did while he was in the world, on the earthly world, like who he was in his essence was this man who truly loved God. Um, and and so it was like there was a certain beauty to like get past all of the failures, to all of the experience, because we all make mistakes. We all have our failures, some bigger, some smaller. Um, and then like the same thing with my mother, like when after she died, like, I got this sense of who she was, and her truth and her essence was like this nurturer, like this mothering, nurturing, um, growing. I'm not quite sure how to language it. Um, and then when my brother died, again, I had dreams, and it was like this realization of who he was in his essence as being actually not at all how I experienced him as an older brother in the world who was struggling with drug addiction and alcoholism and anger and in his essence was he was this person who was actually very sensitive, and very caring and very loving. And so that's brought up for this conversation, or what this conversation brings up in relation to that is like, okay, what is it to be human? Part of that meaning making is around who are we in our essence? Like, how do we make meaning for our lives? Part of how we make meaning for our lives is with a search for truth, for a return to our true self, who or like an internal family systems therapy model would call it like the higher self, you
Mhm.
know. The search for truth will return to that, and then that's what it is to be human. In part is to say, okay, I'm searching for truth. I want to know who I am in my true self. And so there's a reflection of our humanity in the degree to which we engage in that process.
Mhm.
Like it's like we're more human if we consciously say, who am I in my essence? Or who am I in my true self? Or who am I? And like make a commitment to live from that. And I'll give an example. And if I'm rambling on, I know I'm kind of rambling on,
No, no, go ahead.
but I'll give an example, and that is, when I met CD, my spiritual guide, and he he grabbed a hold of my hand, and he kept saying to me, "Your name is Habib." And he would point up and he would say, Allah, he says, your name is Habib. And he was just like, this transmission was coming through him to me that the divine is conveying to me that I am the beloved, that and beloved of God, one who loves God, who carries the love of God, is loved by God, all of that is associated with the name Habib. And at the time, I had no idea what the word Habib in Arabic meant. I had no conception of that. And it was a true medicine for me, like um, to realize my Habibness, to realize my belovedness, right? Um, and so, like that, for me, when I'm talking about your true self and the essence, I feel like I'm more of a human being, the greater degree to which I live Habibness,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
the greater degree to which I do not let outer circumstances keep me from living out that Habibness, that belovedness. So,
Hmm.
like who I am in my truth, in my essence, is someone who loves God deeply. Did I know that when I was 20 years old? No, I did not. I was like, I don't know if God exists, and if he does, I'm mad at him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No.
where I am now I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh yeah. So when I'm struggling, when I'm falling short, when I'm falling down, like how do I live from Habibness, my true self, belovedness? And then that's what makes me human. Like,
And it's interesting you saying that in Arabic, the term for human is insan, and it shares the same root as one is nasitu, which is like to forget. So one of the attributes of a human being is forgetful creatures. And then on the other side, more reflecting of what you were just saying, it shares the same root as the word uns, which means intimacy. So it's the human being was a creature created to be intimate with the divine. That's our purpose, and so just like you were saying, to live according to that as much as we possibly can, is to tap into our actual humanity. And you can say, they use terms like fitra also
mhm,
in Sufism and Islam, where that's like the innate nature that is leans towards goodness and truth and is open to guidance and direction. And so that fitra, we through our choice, we can either uh, nurture it or corrupt it. And so, and there's times when you corrupt it, then nurture is just it's a static understanding, but it's one that's fluid, meaning that it continues to grow and manifest, and it continues to uh become, I guess, is in some terminology people are using that we're becoming something. So our essence as a human being is one of self-discovery that also reflects that of the rest of creation, where we see that we're not just a isolated or independent entity, but that our being is actually woven in interconnectedness with creation and other human beings. Like so our environment, other animals, and then other human beings as well. And every action that we do actually has an impact. Where none of us are an island. Like even us on this podcast on Zoom, we're required somebody to work the electricity, somebody to work like so we're always like the idea of self as an isolated entity is actually something seen as like delusion. But
mhm,
we experience it at various points in time. So we have these tastes to come to knowledge so that we can come. And then that's again with the meaning making is that's the responsibility because
mhm,
we can misapply meanings to things in reality too, and that has an effect on our experience as well. And that's where I think the real responsibility, because we can become nihilists and this doesn't and say it doesn't mean anything. So the meaning that we put to it is no meaning at all, and then that has a whole different world perspective to live from. And so that's where our responsibility, I think, really lies in our humanity, is in how we apply meanings. Because we tell ourselves some great stories, and a lot of times we're the main character. Sometimes we point ourselves as the victim, sometimes the hero. Rarely do people point themselves as the villain, but we do play that role in the various interactions with other people,
Yeah.
and to really being open to see uh, how we are engaging and what we're believing about ourselves. Because I think, at least in the Quran, that's one of the weightiest statements where Allah says that everyone will return to Him and He will tell you the truth of that which you used to do. So
Mm.
that day is what will obliterate our stories if they're false. Like they're,
Yeah.
and so we'll get the director's cut of what was actually going on.
I was just thinking the other day that, you know, who do we like if there is falsehood in our lives, um, and who lives a life without some element of falsehood? I mean, it's like, uh, who do we lie to the most? And I was like, ourselves. Yeah. Like, I think,
That's actually one of the first lines in a song, "Honesty." We lie to ourselves most. That's
yeah.
the first, like the opening line, is that's in the manipulations of the unreal, because that's like you said, it's a true statement. And if we're willing to be open and honest about that, that's a huge, because many humans, in my experience, haven't been willing to be open to see how much we actually lie to ourselves, whether it's to cope, to survive. And sometimes it's not always a negative thing. Sometimes we have to say certain things to get us through a situation, but if we carry it on beyond the
Yeah.
context, that's when it can become detrimental.
It can be, I've seen this too, and um it's always an opportunity when I see when I see someone and I'm like, wow, that person is really unwilling to be honest with themselves. Like they are really unwilling to engage in some compassionate self-witnessing, you know. Then I immediately have to say to myself, okay, so Mr. Where are you? You know, talking to myself, you understand?
Yeah.
Okay, where are you unwilling to engage in some compassionate self-witnessing? What are you not being honest with yourself about? So, it does. It takes a little effort sometimes to.
Yeah, and that's the beauty, because we're a microcosm of the macrocosm. So we're like a reflection. So like you say, that's a good thing to do when you see something on the outside. It's like, okay, that's there. It exists in me somewhere,
Yeah.
even if it's only in potentiality, I think. Like you see what in some is a person exhibiting a state, a way of being that you may not have exhibited before, but you have the potential to exhibit. And so witnessing that in that person, and there's a lesson in there for you somehow, and that's all in the process of that compassionate self-awareness that you were
Yeah.
speaking about, I think.
Yeah. So you brought up, just to make a go back to something you said earlier. You brought out fitra. You know, our the Arabic term for, I'm going to use innate purity. Like that's not how you defined it, but it's equivalent, hopefully, and correct
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So you brought up our innate purity and how part of being human is, you didn't use the word free will, but like you use the, like we either nurture it, or we either in we nurture our innate purity, or we detract from it. Uh,
Hmm.
and that reminds me of something that my spiritual guide and teacher said. And that is that there's three types of people: people who are angelic, people who are devilish, and people who are like cattle. Um, and I wonder if you like, I'll tell you what I immediately I thought, oh, okay, well, the angelic, that's pretty easy. These are the people that help you, return to your true self, take that journey of bringing the light of the soul and the ego self together through the heart, like merging that and traveling to be who you are in truth. These are the angelics. The devilish, like, okay, that's not so hard. What are the cattle? And I thought the cattle are the people who are easily led, like the people who are unwilling to do the I'm going to use the word brother Jamal, and I've brought him up before just a few minutes ago, Jamal Rahman. Um, he uses the word the inconvenient inner work, that term, and I love that term. But that because there are so many of us who find the inner work inconvenient. I think all of us, uh, or if not all, at least most. And there are a lot of people who are just flat out unwilling to do that, to
Mm,
engage in the inconvenient inner work. So it's like if we get in a situation of conflict, like, are we willing to go inside and look at what our part is? Are we willing to go inside and forgive? Are we willing to go inside and do the inner work within ourselves in order to be right and in alignment with our own values, um, and our own beliefs and belief systems, as well as are willing to do the work to be right with the other people on the outer. So like there's an inner and an outer engagement
mm,
to it. Um, and so I think of the cattle as being those people who are like, yeah, no, no, thank you. Uh, no, thank you to this inconvenient inner work, and instead are just being led around by the nose, so to speak. Like believing what they're told by whatever radio station or news station, or just like they're not engaged in a deep way. They're just being led around. So, anyway, that's something that came up in relation to you're talking about our fitra and either leading ourselves closer to it, actualizing it, and embodying it, or further from it. So, I wondered if you have any thoughts on this whole angelic, devilish cattle, this idea that humanity can be divided into these three categories.
sure. So looking at the three categories, the angelic would be those that reflect the higher qualities of the divine in alignment. Now the demonic, there would be an antagonistic force to rising or yeah, rising to the occasion to manifest the divine attributes such as mercy, forgiveness, empathy. But there's these, it's not, it's a underlying mechanism, but how it appears, there's a multitude of ways in where, because there's, when people hear demonic or devilish, they often think like evil, like darkness, but sometimes what people fail to acknowledge or realize is what I call the false light.
Mm,
So there's this pretend of like, oh yes, everything's great, but behind that, it's it's a way where it causes you to miss your potential.
mm,
And then as an animalistic, you can look as, like you said, where there's not this level of self-awareness, where it's just moving by your caprice or your desires, and usually it's lowly qualities or the qualities that we as human beings share with animals. So if just about eating, sleeping, sex, uh, play, these things where that becomes like the central focus, our animalistic qualities become the driving force behind
mm,
why. Because eating isn't something negative. Eating can be a form of worship if you have the right intention and meaning behind what you're doing. And it
Mhm.
also can be gluttonous and just, harmful from just you eating something that's not actually beneficial. It's just, it tastes good, but it's actually harming your body. And but you don't have the self-awareness of how it's harming. You only looking at the taste, just as things that are pleasurable, we move according to that. And I like what you said of like people who listen and are easily swayed one way or the other. That's another good way of seeing the animalistic division of humanity.
Mhm. And what about the cattle?
That's it. The animal. That's what I meant
Okay.
was the animal cattle, because like you said, they're easily
Right.
me
Okay. Yeah. I got it.
previously. Well, I won't say easily because it's a we use that term a lot. And me previously being a shepherd is not as easy as shepherding a flock as it it sounds in the terminology,
Right, right.
but it is in that way where people are easily swayed one way or the other just by someone who has charisma or something of that nature. Or maybe
Mhm.
not even just they hear something that's put on TV and just because it's on TV, they
Yeah.
move left or move right.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that you brought up in talking about the angelic that you brought up the divine names. Uh, so I think it's, if I may say so, I think it's fair to say that probably we both consider ourselves students and teachers of Sufism.
Hmm.
Um, and in Sufism, this I'm trying to make a connection with what you talked about in terms of what is it to be human. Part of being human is making meaning.
Hmm.
And so, but connecting the dots of meaning making and the divine attributes. So in our tradition, there's the idea that in pre-eternity we come from one soul, you know, that there was unity before there was multiplicity, and that there's this divine imbuing. There's this like that in this creation of life, in what we um, in the multiplicity, in the creation of life, in the individual souls, is the imbuing of divine essence, the imbuing of divine spirit or fragrance, whatever language fits your tradition. And there, and in Sufism, there's this idea that who we are as human beings is mirrors of the divine. So I wondered if you might speak a little bit about that mystical idea of what it is to be human.
So in that way is where we're and this is the way I use the term cultivating the soul and the attributes to reflect the attributes of God in our capacity to as much as we are within our capacity,
Mhm.
because obviously the qualities that we have are from God, but they're not exact in God's magnanimity where it's equal, it's from God. And so we look to embody, I mean, the first quality of all is mercy, because that's the quality of existence. We say that this life, our existence, that God gave us existence not out of an obligation, but out of love and out of choice. And so to find that mercy, and this is one of my previous guides, message to me was to give myself the mercy all the time. He used to tell me, give him a city, he used to say,
Mm.
give yourself the mercy. And I didn't understand what that meant. I can't even say to this day that I fully comprehend what that means, because I think it's one of those statements that continues to grow as you grow, And
Hmm.
showing mercy is not always one way. I mean, there's multitudes of ways of mercy. And that's another aspect too that's in our humanity that is sometimes hard to accept because there's one of my teachers also said humanity is one of the greatest veils to God, even though we were created to be the mirror, the signs of God, like this, the proof that
Hmm.
in our choice, many times we become veils. And so operating from a place where we are witnessing God, not in eyesight, but within our hearts. And then that obviously would, you'd have to go into what do you mean when you say the term God? But that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother, but
That's a whole nother.
yeah, a whole nother podcast for that. But in realm of the human being is that once you find this understanding that you seek to align yourself and reflect these qualities as well. Because what I was getting to is that there are strong qualities that are also merciful. Like
Hmm.
sometimes fighting is necessary. And that's not something that's often seen as mercy, but sometimes it's to prevent a greater harm from occurring.
Hmm.
And so the ability to be as open as we can in our means of manifesting mercy also has to do with deepening our humanity.
Thank you. With that said, is it time to hear a song?
Yeah, I was just gonna say this that'd be a good time for me to do this share here, the song called People. Let's see.
So this is a song called People from your newest album called Manipulations of the Unreal. And your website again is
The Man of Real.net.
great.
And here we go.
Some seem good, some seem bad, some seem happy, some seem mad. What does it mean? What is their story? Who is to judge? Who is the jury? How many just want to be happy? To those like that, just let them be. Some seek the Most High to get by, others seek the Most High to get them by. So many images to discern. Don't hold your interpretations too firm. Some gain knowledge, others don't learn. Some escape the fire and others burn. Such a variety, the lives that we live, such an irony. People, people, people. Some are truthful and others deceitful. Some are strong and others are feeble. What do we seek through the mirage? People are people and God is God. People will help and people will hinder. People can heal and people can injure. Who is real and who's a pretender? Watch your heart and who you let enter. We only can see what we can see. There are so many possibilities. We make choices and what will be will be. Reliance on people brings uncertainty. People lie to themselves, we all have proof. Actions are loud, but intentions are mute. We have our ways that we all move. When speaking about people, remember we are people too. People, people. Some are truthful and others deceitful. Some are strong and others are feeble. What do we seek through the mirage? People are people and God is God. Don't Don't alienate all people, we need each other to survive. These are the ways of this world, the ways of this life. Are you strong enough to sift through the rubble to find the treasure ones that makes worth the struggle? Have you been wounded so bad you just push people away, avoiding conflicts like in the means to communicate in ways that connect, not just control, to have things the way you want them to go? Are we result oriented, only outcomes matter? We might get to our goals, but in the wake of disaster, people, some are truthful and others deceitful. Some are strong and others are feeble. What do we seek through the mirage? People are people and God is God. People are holy, people are wealth, a way to help see through ourselves and not just see through ourselves. People and others deceitful. Some are strong and others are feeble. What do we seek through the mirage? People are people and God is God. And God is God.
All right.
Thanks again. That's themanofreal.net, right?
Yeah, the manofreal.net.
Okay. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing that song. Thanks for having the conversation. I'm sure we're way over our, I'd like to stick in the 20 to 40-minute time frame, and I'm sure we're way over. Um, but I was just I really appreciate the fact that the song acknowledges that like people are holy. That was one of the lines. People are
Uh,
holy.
uh-huh.
And yet sometimes people are deceitful. Like
Uh-huh.
like the part of what is it to be human? Part of being human is we have this angelic part, and then part of being human is that we have this lower self part. Um, and and acknowledging that and acknowledging that people are people and God is God. So, do you want to say anything about that line? People are people and God is God.
People are people and God is God. And so people will be what they will be, and God will always be what He is. And so when we have a real grounded, deep understanding of God, we can say people are people and God is God, meaning that we don't allow for humanity to become a veil of God because we are acknowledging God through our witnessing of everything that you said, like people are holy, people is truthful, people deceitful, and then in all of this to not lose our awareness of God's reality because there's something being transmitted to us when we're able to sit in that place and we can learn because like one of the last things that says a way to help is to see through ourself and not just see through ourself. And
Mm,
so it's like to see through the self, meaning to pierce through it and not to just see through ourselves. So on not seeing only through our narrow perspectives, but
right.
to witness that our perspectives are limited and be open to seeing beyond that.
And that fits perfectly with the line, what do we seek? Um, what do we seek through the mirage? Not,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, which brings us back to part of being human is making meaning, and how we make meaning is to search about the truth, to return to the truth, to return to our true selves. Um, so yeah, thanks for engaging in the conversation. Any last minute thoughts?
Um, it's take the journey. The
Yeah,
journey of self-discovery is it's amazing, it's scary. It's but it's worth it at the end of it all, through all of the pains, the joys, the angers, the upsets. It's worth it and it's what we're here for.
yeah. Yeah. So I guess our inspiration from this conversation, what it is to be human, is part of what it is to be human is to take the journey, to return to your true selves, to and in whatever, like I want to hold open the door for, I mentioned earlier, Habibness. Like I wasn't like in this place where I am today. I feel like I'm very in touch with the part of me that loves God and knows that I am a beloved of God and knows that all of us are a beloved of God. But I also know that there was a part of my journey where like I mentioned earlier, I didn't know if God existed. So like I just want to encourage everybody, like regardless of your tradition or no tradition, or where you are in relation to your conception of God and the divine, like in the hold the door open. Like I feel like the way that my spiritual guide held the door open was to say, like travel to your travel through your ego self or your lower self, through your heart, through your soul, to return to your true self and be who you're truly meant to be. So yeah.
No doubt.
And through that taste, like what you taste love in a way that you never knew was possible, and taste being mercy and being compassion and so on in a way that you didn't know was possible. So now I think on that note, it's a good spot to it's a good place to end. So again, thank you for having a conversation about what it is to be human. Thank you for sharing your creativity. Thank you, all of us, for joining us on Beyond Names. Before you go, briefly, just one breath, take a breath and reflect for just a moment on anything that stayed with you from the song, people, from this conversation. May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to yourself, back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it, leave a review, or reach out. Until next time, peace be with you. May you be light, may you carry light, and may you share your light.